Joining me on the yellow table is someone I actually have known for quite a few years. I've lost the number of years. And he's actually previously been on The Couch, which is the podcast that I run out of the Middle East. I'd like to welcome Madhu. Madhu, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjun.
Right.
Great
So
to be
just
here.
a little bit more on Madhu. Madhu is one of three co-founders of a company called M2P. He is one of the two M's, and then there is a P. And, they're now a significant sized fintech out of India. They not only operate in India, but multiple countries, including Middle East and now in Africa too. So I guess, Madhu, welcome to SFF. But I think you've been coming to SFF for years,
Few years,
right?
yeah.
A few years. So I guess this is nothing new for you. So, Madhu, we have about 15 minutes. So this is not like my typical podcast, which sort of goes on for about an hour. And, we have a lot of banter. We can still have banter. But the overarching theme for this year's festival has been re-architecting.
Yeah.
And I like that word rather than disrupting, right? Because I think that word disrupting is a little bit like clickbaity, right? Is re-architecting the global financial system, right? And you could pretty much put anything under that umbrella, right? And there's a lot going on.
Right.
So I guess two-part question, or to you to start off with straight away. What does the word re-architecting mean to you, right? How does that resonate to you? And the second bit is, out of all these various things that are going on, I'd be very keen to hear your view on a couple which you sort of rank, first among equals in terms of the impact they will have in what I say the shortest time. So they'll have a sizable impact in the least possible time.
Yeah.
So the floor is yours.
Awesome. So, Arjun, I think we've chatted offline about this, right? So if I just have to draw an analogy, if there's a car where you have to improve, the mileage, let's say from 40 miles a gallon to 50 miles a gallon, you'll have to retool. If you have to go from 40 miles to 400 miles, you necessarily have to reinvent, right? So therefore, a lot of work that's happening around banking tech over the years have been just retooling, where you've kind of squeezed it out to the hilt that it no longer will actually sustain, right? Which is what is happening now back home in India, where banks have started raising their hands and saying, this is it. We can't, optimize anymore, which necessarily means that you have to go back and start ground zero and saying, what is it that we should build for the next 20 years, right? And we are seeing that come with a lot of force because of two factors. One, in most emerging markets where RTP is taking off, it's actually putting a lot of duress on, core bank infrastructure, right? Which means that your customer is impacted, your, executives are, questioned, regulator is clamping down. You have had few examples in Asia where regulators have asked large banks to actually stop business and get, your house in order, right? Which is basically means that the regulator is watching, right? And then there is this whole macro playbooks, like in India, the whole aspect of public good, which is actually beginning to become mainstream, where you need to actually start thinking about what this infrastructure means, right? So in some ways, we are at the tipping point where banking business is actually gravitating towards becoming an internet scale business, and no longer is a 9 to 5, but it's a 24/7 orchestra where the music cannot stop. Yeah. Sorry, I missed the second part of the question, right? And I'm like pretty excited about the fact that there's a lot of noise around enabling MSMEs and whatnot, in generally speaking, right? But we now have the ability, and there are a lot of the big tech that's doing. I don't want to name anyone in particular, but we see heightened action around how could you pull in some of the capabilities that a big tech can bring in, and contextualize that for an SME who's doing a business, right? And really apply financial services to that. The distribution cohort could be anybody. It could be a fintech, it could be a bank that wants to reinvent or launch these set of products. I think the action that we are seeing around SME, MSME is phenomenal. And that, in many of the emerging markets, again, is the undercurrent of the economy itself, right? So naturally, you're going to basically move up the GDP by a few basis points just by the sheer efficiency financial services can bring in. And that's what we are very excited about as an organization as well.
So let's unpack the second one first, and I guess we won't get time to unpack both. So let's do the unpacking of the second, because I think that's not been, although that's been identified by a number of people who've come before you, it's not something we've unpacked, right? So I'm going to make a few sort of statements. Apologies for overgeneralizing, because no two markets are the same, right? MSMEs, SMEs, however you want to call them, are, the lifeblood, the backbone of most economies.
True,
Right?
true.
It doesn't matter
True.
if it's developed or underdeveloped. By large, they're anywhere between 40 to 80% of GDP, and they're definitely 80 to 95 or 99% of the employment base. Right? So they are the lifeline. Right? Across the board, they're underserved.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In some
Phenomenally,
countries,
yeah.
some countries woefully underserved,
Yeah.
and others pretty woefully underserved. Right?
They don't exist. Yeah.
Right? And the topic of doing something for the MSMEs has always been top of agenda. I have been, I'm
Doing this
an,
forever. Yeah,
I'm an old dog here. I've been in consulting. I've had 2 stints in consulting. I've only been ever in financial services. Never have I not heard that SMEs and MSMEs are important, right?
Yeah.
So 3-part question for you. Right. Sorry, let me qualify one more point. Banks, in vast majority of the world, right now are enjoying record profits.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a question saying, why do I venture into a segment
Yeah.
which I don't want to? And I'll go as far as me having an argument with a banker a week ago where we are trying to help, build a community bank for micro and small businesses. And the banker's response to me was, all that stuff, Arjun, is great on the front of the cover. The fact of the matter is you will have to make this bank go to large corporates or else we won't make money. Right? And I disagree with him, but that's so set in their mindset that it's incredibly hard. Right? So those are the things which I wanted to put as a context. So 3-part question. What is it that's changing, which is so different? Right? So what is it? The regulators are coming and sort of, disincentivizing you, providing grants. What is it? Secondly, what role is technology playing in all of this? And, I'd love to hear some of the use cases that you can bring to life. And thirdly, do you really see the incumbents going after it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, if you have to just box it in those 3 buckets, right?
You can add a 4th if you want
sure.
to.
So if you really look at it, what has changed and where is this leapfrogging going to happen is if you look around all of the other pieces of the business that they were running with, right? Mobile has come in as the center of their existence today, right? So if you'll find that a lot of bookkeeping apps that are out there, which is actually help build those businesses may not survive, right? They may not have got funding with what's going on the macros, but the whole aspect of habit building has happened where somebody is record keeping in their in their mobile and whatnot, and mashing up financial services is kind of easy because it was always a chicken and egg saying I need the customers first to build use cases or value prop. The value prop got delivered in some form and shape. Somebody needs to kind of consolidate, right? And we also have had this shift in how banks look at some of these fintech partnerships in many markets where there was frenemies. And now there is actually a selective cooperation that's doing where the banks have realized that we have a limitation and there is probably somebody who can actually go do the last mile or the first mile where we are not able to actually meaningfully serve, right?
So that reduce the cost of customer acquisition, which is a big problem.
That shift has happened in a significant manner where 3 years ago I wouldn't have said this, but today bankers are realizing the need to actually partner up and do this. And Middle East as an exception to this is still actually warming up to that idea. But in most other markets in ASEAN, in India, we see that banks increasingly wanting to be seen fintech friendly and be supportive of, they're not seeing it as a competition, right? And that's where the regulator is coming in and saying, I will draw the line. If you are actually getting into manufacturing that product, you come get regulated and be a regulated business. If you want to be a distribution touch endpoint, you be calling yourself fintech or big tech or whatever that be. So there is actually the rules of the engagement that is being drawn out, which was an arbitrage even 2 years ago, right? India went through this big shift, in terms of what fintechs can do and can't do, which necessarily drew this, terms of reference to say that if you are, touching the customer's money, you have to be a regulated business, right? That is a big shift, which means that at the underlying, level for the customer, there is trust that will be there to those products, right? What if this is a fly-by-night and it doesn't show up tomorrow? So if it's offered by one of the large public banks, but just peddled by some fintech or a big tech, you still have that logo that carries that weightage to actually deliver that product promise, right? So that's the second part. So there is regulatory action that is helping that cause. And the third and the most important aspect of this is the fact that a lot of these businesses are seeing now or seeing and thinking omni-channel. It's a very, very badly used term, but there is no business that is saying, I will not think of serving my customers digitally. It could be a small bakala in some street corner, but he's
Yeah,
still...
and they'll use InstaShop or
That's
something
right.
like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So therefore, that this transition of being a physical format to online is happening natively and organically, which means that you need to move up the value chain, which means there's footprint of data and whatnot, and that access can get enabled. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I think you have in large markets you have a challenge of velocity and variance, right? And can you solve for both of this so that you're able to actually take out strands of opportunities that you can build out? So I see an opportunity to actually build out very, very specific SME, for lack of a better word, neobanking capabilities, right? Which basically means that you bundle in a whole set of features and then offer it for a certain specific segment, rather than saying, I'm an SME neobank. You could be a fisheries-based neobank, for example, right? So that's where we see a lot of that market moving. Whether the fintech is going to, who is the actor who's going to actually deliver this? We would bet on all horses, and that's what
So that's a very interesting point, right? So as the last thought on the table, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try and sort of keep pushing you into a corner, because I will make you sort of get off the fence on this one, right? Well, if I'm able to. Let's just assume everything that you're saying falls into place, and I agree.
Yeah.
These MSMEs are getting more formal, so you use the word habitual. Their businesses are going more online, which means they're becoming more transparent, because that's one of the problems you had, right? There are ways to get to this customer more efficiently through either embedding or partnerships. So the cost of customer acquisition is getting better. There are more sophisticated, I guess, products out there. If I take credit, there are ways to now evaluate credit using multiple different parameters, right? And there is potentially a regulatory sort of umbrella coming through saying, this is now important. I need to trigger, growth in my economy, and it has to come through, organic people. So let's assume all of that plays into place. Here's a brilliant question, not because it's brilliant in the sense that I'm asking, but it's brilliant in terms of the answer that needs to come through, which is, are you going to see banks go beyond banking and become more ecosystem players? Or are you going to see banks become more mercantile in their capability, which is, we will do core banking and we will let the ecosystem take care of itself, and we'll attach ourselves where it is, right? I don't want to call it banking as a service. I think that's undermining the role of the bank. I guess the answer is both, but where do you see most of it go?
I think it's gravitating more towards the second part of it, which is bankers want to just relegate themselves to doing that banking. And that's what most regulators also want. They don't want them to be powering a super app and whatnot, because it's beyond their remit, one. And the fact is, most regulators see it as a distraction, right? So wherever there is this opportunity to participate in things beyond banking, you'll always find the regulator clamping down, because if there is some lacuna in the way the service is delivered, it's going to actually impact the brand as well. And so therefore, bankers are very cognizant, even in a partnership sense. Why do you assess for franchise risk, right? If a gaming company can get you millions of customers, banks put them as a high risk because of a certain reason. There's a aspect of franchise risk that's out there. So therefore, even from what we are seeing as action today, there's heightened activity around how we can better manage risk from a franchise risk standpoint. So what are the levers? So how can I track what this app is doing of the fintech? What is their social reviews that's going on? If there's a campaign that they're running, those they didn't care a few years ago. Now a lot of that is going back into the diligence that runs through the process. Not just at the gate, but it's a constant journey where there's a feedback loop that's flowing in saying this new version of the app, there's good positive feedback around it, right? So therefore, I believe that there will be capacity that will be built to make sure that that distribution engine room gets more efficient in the way it is run. But I don't see them going the full hog to actually deliver it. And
sorry, I said that was the last question, but this is the last question. What does that actually mean for M2P going forward?
So we are right in the middle of that action, right? So we are fortunately, from a timing perspective, we are right at the intersection of financial services and consumer internet. And our DNA has been to enable a lot of those internet scale companies. To my earlier point, every bank worth its salt will want to actually become digital, and you will have 10 out of 10 bankers saying
I
this,
think
right?
every bank is a digital bank
That's
eventually, right?
At least
So,
aspirationally, they
yeah.
are in their mind.
Yeah.
So therefore, as long as we are able to get the right ecosystem partners come together, we would be in business, as long as we are able to solemnize that wedding and have that
I like
many
that.
to many wedding,
Yeah.
continue to sort of flourish. Yeah.
Right. No, thanks, thanks, Madhu. Thanks for coming in. I
you,
know you have to leave for the airport and catch your flight back to Mumbai. Your family doesn't get to see you enough, from what I hear.
Yeah.
So I think it's high time you leave this.
I'm checking into my house this evening.
Oh,
So
you're checking into your house. That's it. You live in a hotel when you check into
right.
the house. That's actually a good analogy to put it. So best of luck.
Thank you so much,
and
Ajay.
best of luck with all the expansion. I think you guys are doing wonderful things. Keep your feet on the ground, your sort of head focused, and as they say, stay humble. We'll definitely meet soon.
Awesome.
We'll
Awesome.
meet in the Middle East, like we do, or at least we'll speak soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks.
Goodbye.